Welcome to Cancel Culture, the Business of Law podcast brought to you by Byfield. Welcome back to Cancel Culture, coming to you today from an incredibly sunny London, and I am delighted to be joined by Patrick McCann. Patrick is the Chief Executive of the City of London Law Society and co-CEO of City Century, the solicitor apprenticeship initiative recruiting around 150 school leavers, many from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, into paid city law careers. He's also co-founder of the Social Welfare Solicitors Qualification Fund. Previously, Patrick was Director of Learning at Linklaters and former Chair of the CLLS Training Committee. He's built major queer leadership and talent initiatives, including diversity, Queer City Law Career, and the LLP. Patrick's a highly visible LGBTQ plus voice in the profession with many, many LinkedIn followers, which we'll come on to. Great. So, Patrick, welcome to Cancel Culture, and thanks so much for joining us. How are you? How's your week going so far?
It is going all right. So we got some sun today. I think that's only the second day of sun that I remember this year. So the rain seems to have stopped for a moment. So that's good news. And I'm in a gorge new vintage Paul Smith corduroy suit. So off vintage. So, the world is a good place today.
Yeah, the colours are amazing. Definitely brightening up my screen. And yeah, I think London seems to be buzzing today with hope for spring, which is a really nice feeling. It was light when I left the office last night, so I think we're hopefully turning a corner. But talking of City of London, you were recently appointed, it's nearly a year now, correct, to as Chief Executive of the City of London Law Society. You've got a career spanning 30 years doing all sorts of really interesting stuff, which we will dive into. But just in terms of your appointment, how's your first year been?
Yeah, so I was appointed. Well, I should say I retired from my from big corporate law firm job 31st of January 2025. So that was from Linklaters, where I was learning director, but also jointly ran the knowledge and learning team. And I retired. My husband retired shortly after me, and then this job came up, and I wouldn't have gone for any other job. I've been working in and around London law for about 40 years now, and but it's just it was just a potential. There's massive potential with the role, and I had worked with the CLLS for about 15 years on the training committee, which I chaired for the last 5, and they'd always been good for me, and they'd allowed me to do some stuff, and it sort of, I think, worked for them, worked for me, and for the people that the projects I ran benefited. And so just having that opportunity, was a big thing. And look, it's a big job, right? It sounds like a big job, chief executive of the law society that looks after the biggest and most sort of well-known law firms. It's really, that feels like a good place to get to in your career. So and so I've been here about 6 months, nearly 6 months. I work 3 days a week, so I think that's about 70-80 days. So it's less than it might sound, but I think we're in a good place.
And as you mentioned, your background, you qualified as a solicitor, but you made the transition into learning and development. What maybe prompted that move? Is it a common move for solicitors to make, or did you take an unusual career path?
I think I was one of the first to make that move across. I think up until that point, law firm learning departments either didn't exist, or they were small, or they were run by seasoned learning professionals who might have come up through an HR route. And so I think it's unusual. At the time, it was unusual for lawyers to go into L&D. It became more usual in the, I would say, early 2000s for about 10 years, and now it's become less usual. And then I think it's quite unusual for someone to go from learning back into sort of CEOing or into CEOing. So that's been unusual. But I've never been a typical person. I've always been a bit of an outlier. I've always been a bit odd. So I've forged my own path, I like to think.
No, that's excellent. And from coming from that background, and like you said, having lots of different experience, how has that shaped the way that you're approaching the CEO role today?
Yeah, so I think a few things I'd say to that. So first of all, I think people assume that learning is just training and teaching stuff, but actually, it's usually if it's done well and deployed properly, it's right at the center of structural, strategic, behavioral change. So it's, the business wants to go from A to B, and therefore these things need to happen. Therefore, it needs its people to do these things, or it's introduced new systems. Therefore, people need to know how to adapt what they do and how they do it. In order to help the organization get to where it needs to go. So you're quite often right at the center of things. Quite often you hear about the direction of it, the firm, a change in focus, a merger, a change in prioritization really early on, because you're brought in that stage. So that feels like strategy as well. I think on a sort of a skills level, I'm used to being in front of people. I'm used to being able to communicate. I'm used to being able to try and solve problems and come up with ways forward. So that feels sort of strategic as well. I'd done 2 or 3 really big organizational pieces. So, I'd set up a couple of initiatives, including using the CLS as a platform, City Century and Swissquif. And so I was used to running organizational change across a number of different law firms. There's a drive in me now that I want this job to count for something, and I want to make my mark and deliver betterment within the city legal sector in whatever way I can. So I feel I can do that now.
That sounds like a really good place to start. So where do you start? What's on the agenda for the rest of the year for you and for CLLS?
Um, so the process usually is agree job description, uh, uh, audit, survey, speak to your stakeholders, speak to your clients, speak to the team, look macro at what's going on in society, in the sector, in relation to legal, in relation to city, in relation to solicitors, and then begin to forge a direction of travel going forward. So look, I will say, in relation to the City of London Law Society, the feedback that we get from partners is pretty positive, and where we are seen, the work I think we do is seen as being valuable and valued as well. But there are areas that are new and emerging that I think we need to focus on, and it is probably true to say that we have been a bit shy about what we have done. So I'm not immediately sure everybody knows what we do and what we offer, including government, including City UK PLC, including UK PLC, including the solicitors that work for our organisation. So that has meant that defining that way forward. So you do the audit, you work out a direction of travel, and then you settle that with your primary stakeholders. So we're close to settling it with our board, and we are now going out to our law firms members particularly, and we will be liaising with other stakeholder organisations, the SRA, the LSB, TLS, and going, this is where we think we want to go. So we're now at it's a horrible phrase, but now the socialisation of the strategy. So there are a few different bits to that, but it's about essentially elevating what we do, making sure that what we do really matters and is critical, and then amplifying what we do. So being much more public about our activities, not just of us as a society, but of our member law firms and of the solicitors. Nothing happens in this country, and I'd argue globally, of significance that involves law without one or more of our law firms being involved. I think that's just the nature of it. Any big acquisition, any big transformation, any big infrastructure project, any big government regulatory thing, there's going to be a lawyer involved, and they're probably going to be from one of our more than 70 law firms. So that's significant. That adds adds loads of money in tax to Treasury, but it also means that, business happens, and our current government, wants to do business growth. All of that has to involve our lawyers. So we're right at the centre of all of that, and we want to just be speaking about that a lot.
Are there any kind of big themes that you're particularly focusing on looking at this year?
Yeah. So we've got so themes that are in the world are definitely ethics, rule of law, health of our solicitors, health of the sector, AI, promoting London, UK as a place where you want to do business and where you want to conduct legal matters, and then just changing ways of working, different multi-generationals, different ways of being in and out of the office, different business models. All of that's the hodgepodge of what there is. And I would say, having worked in and around this for 4 decades, there is a bigger convergence of bigger things which in themselves are bigger than I've ever seen before. And so just navigating all of that is our biggest challenge. So there are like 4 main R's that we've got in our strategy. As it's currently iterated, it might be subject to change, but first of all is rallying resource. So making sure that we're working with all of our firms, with our teams, and with other big players in the legal ecosystem, so that cumulatively we're bringing good change. Secondly, it's about reinforcing our reputation. So making sure that what we're doing is seen and is noticed and is acknowledged and is conveyed to people. Then thirdly, there is robustifying. Robustifying is a word, I promise you. Our representation. So making sure that we are advocating and making the case for our solicitors, for our law firms, for the sector, very clearly to governments, to clients, to regulators, etc. And then finally, and I'm really pleased that this one seems to have caught attention, is radiating responsibility. So to be seen as an upstanding, contributive, commercial, profitable, decent member of society, member of the sector, member of the UK. So those are like our 4 R's, and that will drive everything that we do, and they build on each other. So getting people together, making sure that what we do is known, making sure that you're advocating, and then to make sure that what you're advocating on makes sense. All of that is what we'll do, and that will play out in terms of I think in terms of our LinkedIn profile, in terms of podcasts, in terms of, a bit like this, in terms of our in-house magazine, in terms of our LinkedIn page, in terms of the events that we run. I think all of that will begin to cascade through over the next few weeks and months.
That's a lot to do, but some really exciting milestones ahead.
Yeah, it should be. And sorry, I should have said you'll never get a short answer out of me. Sorry, I am.
No, not at all.
I'm called hashtag Chatty Patty for a reason, right? I've always had lots of thoughts, and I've had a bit of an ability to be able to articulate them most of the time. I'm not good at self-editing, so sorry.
I mean,
so just
the
tell
less
me to stop.
the less people hear from me, the better. So you're on to we want to hear from you. I'm also going to use robustifying in a sentence today at some point. So thank you for that.
And by the way, just your title, Council Culture. It was only when you said it out loud that I realised what you were doing. I love playing on words. I love stuff like that. I love brands. So I bow down to you.
I wish I could take credit for it, but it's a name that's inherent. Okay, fine. It's
a name disappointed you're not called hashtag legal Linzi. So I'll just leave you.
I mean, we can try and make that happen. If anybody listening out there would like to start using that hashtag, I'm all for it. In terms of your tenure and what you are hoping to see, if we kind of fast forward 2-3 years, thinking about all of the themes that you're going to be tackling, and as you said, we seem to be at a massive turning point for the industry. And I'm sure everybody says this every single year, but in terms of like geopolitics, the competition in the sector, AI, mergers, it's a huge inflection point. And your background in terms of teaching the industry and applying a learning and development kind of strategic approach to how you take the City of London with you, I mean, it's a massive job. Like I said, very exciting. Where would you want the profession to be in a couple of years? Is there anything particularly that you want to say, we have to fix this, or here's a massive opportunity for us?
Yeah, look, I think my overall thing is that I'd like us to be seen as a really strong community, and to have a really strong reputation about delivering good in all of its facets, through the economy, through the communities in which we work, through the sector, and wider. And I would also like to think that that will include that we care about what we do and we care about the people who do that work. My overall aim is that I would like us within 3 years to be the law society that other law societies, other professional bodies point to and go, look what they're doing. That seems good. I'd really like us to be known as a sector that definitely makes money, definitely is on the biggest deals and all over the the most complex disputes, and is right there at the heart of regulation and change, but also that stands for something and does it in a way that is ethical, that delivers a sustainable sorry, I'm using all the buzzwords, but it delivers a sort of a sustainable profession. And what I'm really keen to do is that every day that we leave our desks, we've left it in a slightly better state than when we arrived in the morning. And I think we are moving out of those. I hope we're moving out of those just make money times, compete with everyone, eat your lunch type thing. I hope that we've moved into something a little bit with a higher purpose, while still obviously delivering all those profits, delivering those good works, doing the hours, keeping our clients really happy.
Do you think we're in a better position to do that kind of post-COVID era? Do you think it's more achievable now?
Yeah, I do. Look, I think, and I don't know, because we're early in terms of this this society's strategy. But I've been very encouraged by the board calling that out as something. And when we've started to bring this to law firm leaders, and it seems to be meeting with good response. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think it is not coincidental that the people in law firm leadership positions have a values system, do seem to care about something beyond profits, are thinking about legacy. So those people I'm meeting, I'm sort of, I'm getting that. But also there is a real live pressure from our workforces to deliver a working reality that can work for people. And what I love about the early generations going into mid-level generations is that they are much clearer about what they need and are much more willing to surface that and speak about that. When I joined a law firm back in 1990, you kept quiet, you did what needed to be done, and if the partner needed to go and get their dry cleaning, you went and got that. And if you got away from the day without being metaphorically hit around the head, you did well, right? It's very different, and that power balance is that power dynamic is coming a bit more level. But then I also see with new partners, and I've coached a number of them, but they bring a whole load of wants to the role, and it's not just about ascending, and it's not just about doing the best work, and it's not just about making money. It's about more than that. And the stuff I hear is about, I want this to be decent. I want to be able to look my kids in the face and say I've treated my team well. I want to help my clients navigate an ethical path forward on things. And then, of course, we've got governments and regulators that are looking at what we're doing as well. We know that there'll be a Legal Services Board report coming out. We know that there are things that we will be wanting to respond to. So I think we're the drive to get our houses in order, I think, is a relatively strong one, and much more than it would have been, for all sorts of good and bad reasons, much more than it would have been 20 years ago, I would say.
And having the buy-in of managing partners and senior partners within firms, that's really going to build the pipeline for the future, right? So like learning by example. You've obviously got a lot of experience in other initiatives, which I'd love to chat about in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds and building, that social mobility pipeline too. Pat, could we just spend a bit of time talking about that? How are you hoping to implement some of that change into your role at the moment?
Yes, look, I'm a collaboration is greater than competition type person. That's what I've always done. You know, I've got a track record over the last 20, 30 years of working with lots of different organizations and people. You know, I really like people, so I like to work with as many of them as possible. And so, where I think we've had really significant success, my two co-CEOs, Joe Hughes and Joe Gubby, is in relation to City Century, and that was a bringing together of now 52. I think I've just had a meeting, which might mean it's 53 law firms. I think that's what that senior partner just said to me. Uh, Law firms who are recruiting from schools primarily through the solicitor apprenticeship route to bring people into those organisations, thereby cutting out the need to incur traditional university related debt. And so what that has done is triple the number of law firms who are recruiting. Is now, I think, more than tripled the number of solicitor apprentices that are being recruited, and is now offering over 150 life-changing opportunities to kids out of school. And we are mainly focusing our work on reaching out to low socioeconomic type areas. That's not to say that we're exclusive to those areas, but that is where we are bringing people in. So inner city, rural, coastal, former manufacturing towns, or long way from London, and we're trying to bring people into those opportunities by cutting out that need to incur 70, 80, 100,000 pounds worth of university debt. That has been quoted as the most significant social mobility initiative in law in 40 years. And that's been one that we've done the three of us have done part-time working with our 50 law firms, working with some other people around us as well. But that's a great example, I think, of where you've got will and you try and facilitate that will into practice, that stuff happens. And I'm immensely proud of that. You know, my co-CEO Joe Hughes has been awarded an MBE in the last King's Honours a couple of weeks ago. In fact, she picked it up last week at Windsor Castle. So that is getting recognition about what you can achieve. And that gives me so much hope that if you get a bunch of people in a room and you go, this is what we're going to do, we're going to try and make it easy, but will you do your bits? People love it, right? And we are seeing. So that's great that we've done that, but the biggest changer in terms of social mobility will be the kids that we're bringing in now, and they are just doing phenomenally well. They are just delivering ambitious, collaborative, getting really good grades at the universities, are delivering really good work within their workplaces, and so we are seeing that they will be the people that change the industry, right? We're just bringing them in, right, and then they are changing the industry, and we are seeing that the ideas that they bring, the energy and the drive and the ambition that they bring. You know, some of them, even, I love this, one of my favorites is Bobby Neofitu, who's at Cripps, and it actually says, you know, his byline is ambitious solicitor apprentice. I'm like, yes. Yes,
That's
love
brilliant.
that, right? Love that.
We are speaking during LGBTQ plus History Month, and some of the other super important work that you have done throughout your career is establish the LLP, exclamation point for those that are listening and not looking at the written word, and that has won awards.
Yeah,
And
that's it.
I thought it would be great if we could spend a little bit of time kind of talking about your lived experience. And you've got 23,000 followers on LinkedIn now. I need to get some tips.
It's 26,000. I'm
It's
afraid.
26. You heard it here first,
I
everybody.
count them all. I count them all. Yeah.
Look, the profession, as you said, has obviously changed quite a lot, both, you know, in terms of just the treatment of people and the expectation, and we're making some positive ground. What do you see as kind of important looking ahead to the future for the next generation of talent?
So I think it's trying to sort of equalize things so that anybody with talent and tenacity and time can get to wherever they want to get to within this industry or outside. And so for some people that involves some extra support in terms of, you know, bringing their skills up, or sponsorship, or real systemic questions being asked in law firms about why people are getting opportunities and why some other people aren't, and for that to be redressed. And we've seen some really good work, pre 2025, and particularly saw some really good work in that sort of EDI space. Query whether that is happening as much, or if it is happening, whether it's happening as visibly. I particularly see that in the LGBT space in terms of ascending up to partner and beyond. I would argue there's still a bit of a barrier for LGBTQ people, and certainly at like law firm leader level, I can only in the last 35 years think of a handful, maybe 6, possibly 7 out queer law firm leaders. I can think of a few that weren't out, but I definitely can't think of, in fact, I met one yesterday, which I was, oh my God, wow, one more, brilliant. You've got my statistics. So I think it's about that. It's about making those opportunities available. The reason we put the hashtag LLP exclamation mark, the reason we put the exclamation mark was we wanted this course to be better than any of the others, and we wanted it to deliver extra value. Was giving people the space to, and particularly with queer people, there is stuff that happens in our childhoods that mean that we aren't who we are. Quite often we will mask, and we mask for security and protection so that we don't get attacked, beaten up, etc. And that has an impact, right? Both positive and negative in terms of what you cannot do, how you see yourself, what you'll put yourself forward into, and just getting 30 people into a room and going, what was it like? What are you about? What do you think you can do? Where do you want to get to with your careers? Just giving people that space, I think, is really life changing. I have most weeks, I have someone. We've put 60 people through the course now. Most weeks, I get one of them contacting me just saying, I remember that course, and this is what it delivered to me. So I think it's definitely about support, and it goes under the wider umbrella of care, decency, humanity, collaboration. We should all be treating any juniors like they're our younger brother and sister, really, and that we like, and giving them some support, and so that care piece is important. And look, it's not just about being nice people. It is because when people are engaged and feel they're looked after and valued and noticed, observed and supported, they will perform at a higher level. And in this industry, particularly in city legal sector, you cannot command the rates that you need to command in order to drive the profits that your partners will expect unless people are performing at the highest level, releasing that discretionary effort substantially over a period of time. So you have to look after your talent. So it has a real monetary value.
And you use your LinkedIn platform to promote and discuss these issues. Amongst everything else, would encourage people to follow Patrick on LinkedIn.
Please do.
For anybody listening to this that is either reluctant to put themselves out there on LinkedIn or generally just doesn't know where to start, or do you have any tips for them?
Yeah, so look, you don't have to start big, and you don't have to start at all by publishing, but just being on there, I think, is helpful. What LinkedIn is a democratization of voices through professions, through industries, and so find the industry that you're in. Let's say it's legal, and just join, and then follow, connect with a bunch of people. It'll be in legal, it's really easy. You find Simon P. Marshall or TBD Marketing, who produce a report every quarter about people who are being noticed, who are getting lots of engagement, and then you follow them. I call that lurk and learn, and you see how any of that feels for you, and you see whether you want to do any of that. Once you've done a bit of that, comment, react to, ask questions, build up your community that way. Once you feel comfortable, start posting. Start easy. Here's a thing that without breaching confidentiality, thing that I've been working on, or here's a report that's come out, or here's some things I'm thinking about today, and just see what works, and after a period of time, you'll work out that there are 3 or 4 or 5 main pillars of content that you might want to provide, and you will grow from that. Look, I've only really been on LinkedIn maybe 3-4 years. I've only really been actively on it for 2.5. But I've worked hard at it. It fits in with my longish working day. And I've got loads out of it in terms of my own confidence, in terms of learning from others. I've developed some really, really good friendships with people very quickly. I now have a profile, so I do not walk into a room in law without someone saying that they feel like they know me, and they know a version of myself that I've put out there. They don't necessarily know me at my worst. They know a version that I've put out there, and then I can help people just by, sharing some tips, some insights. I try and help people with their confidence. Put something on today just about, don't be fooled by the gloss that you see around you. It's meant to intimidate you. So just know that that's just happened, but none of us know what we're doing, frankly. And so, I think I've called it # don't believe the hype. So, and I found it a really good space. Look, I'm a kid that was I've always been an outlier. I was on the outside. I wasn't the cool kid. I wasn't in the cool gang. I was very much the uncool kid in the uncool gang. I wasn't picked first, or even second last for the school sports teams. And my brother was captain of all the school sports teams. And I brought that person, and I've given him a better life where I hang around with a bunch of what I consider to be cool people. I think any objective ranking would go, they're probably uncool. But we found a bunch of oddballs I hang around with, and I love them. I really do. So that's brought me so much. And if I can bring a bit of that to other people, I will do. And it's got me jobs, right? It got me this job for sure. For sure, it got me this job.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I could chat to you all day, but I think it's important that I release you so we can both get some vitamin D over lunch. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
Yeah, look, I would just say, I would say to leaders, brilliant. Thank you for what you're doing. Remember, we're a profession run by people. For mid-level managers, I would say kick up and kiss down. Call it out upwards and look after the people downwards. And for juniors, I've got a thing called Feel Good About Yourself Friday, which is, and it'll be on my LinkedIn page. It'll be in the featured bits. FKF, it's called Feel Good About Yourself Friday. And it's just a technique to spend 5 minutes every week reflecting on what you've done and to reflect on what that means you can now do going forward. It's very, very simple. And that will help you build up your confidence level, your understanding, so that you can then project that value to others, so that they then involve you in good work, and you then you create the future that you then merit.
Amazing. Well, we will absolutely be adhering to that at Byfield this Friday. Well, look, thank you again, Patrick. It's been
Pleasure.
lovely to chat to you.
You've been listening to Council Culture, the Business of Law podcast brought to you by Byfield. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and join us again next week, where we'll be discussing some more of the biggest stories in the legal sector.